All right, Matt. So I found this out the other day that leather is actually rated on texture, like how it feels. And cows that have a lot of water typically have softer hides, so they're rated A hide. But hides from cows in like hot, dry climates are usually dehydrated.
Dang it. I was trying to figure it out as you went. I didn't get there.
Good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
Good. So before we get into it, I want to say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with, and you can find some tips and tricks on podcasting if you want to get into podcasting. Also, while you're on the internet, go rate and review us. If you don't mind, give us a rate and review. It helps boost the algorithm or whatever it is. But when people search for podcast in our genre, then if we have a lot of reviews, then we'll pop up and it'll bring more people into the graveyard. So go over there, give us a rate and review, say something nice, don't care what you say. You can give us a glowing positive review or a recipe. I don't care.
Yeah. But yeah, we got a banana bread recipe one time.
We did. That was good.
It was pretty good.
We also want to let y'all know that we've been teasing it for a while, but sometime this month in February, we are going to, for our $10 patrons, the $10 level, we're going to start dropping a new show that's Patreon only. You can only get it if you're a $10 patron, and it's going to be different because what we're going to do, we're going to remove the video of the recording of this show and put it on YouTube for everybody. But in replacement of that, you're going to get your very own unique show. It's going to be nothing like Graveyard Tales. There is going to be cussing. So just keep that in mind. If I feel like
just a big cuss show.
Well, I feel like we have to say it because Graveyard Tales is clean with innuendo jokes. This is not going to be innuendo jokes. This is going to be in your face jokes. We'll talk like we normally talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like, we would casually speaking to one another. And it's going to be, like Adam said, it's different. We're going to have special guests. It's going to be much more conversational than even Graveyard Tales is. We're going to discuss all kinds of different, topics. We may not have a topic, when we have a special guest, it's not going to be an interview. It's just, we're bringing them in to kind of, talk and chat and bring up whatever.
It's going to be more like a look into our lives more than anything. Yeah.
But it's gonna be a lot of fun too, we've already been working on it, getting it ready to put out, so we've already started having some fun with it, and I think you guys are really gonna enjoy it. So remember, it's only gonna be for our $10 patrons,
and as soon as we get artwork settled and music settled and stuff like that, then it will go up, and we'll let everybody know when it does. But the $10 level is where you will find it. So if you want to get a jump on it, sometime this month, we're going to be dropping the pilot episode. So go over there, sign up, patreon.com/Graveyard Tales, sign up to become a $10 patron, and you'll get access to the brand new show, and you can have it stream into your podcatcher whatever you use. You don't have to listen to it on the website. Copy the RSS feed into your podcatcher, and you can get it on there like any other show.
Right.
So, Matt, that's all I've got for the housekeeping and the intro. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about 4 separate alien abductions. Okay, I came across these. It was a much bigger list, and we divided it up, kind of narrowed it down to some of the most compelling, and some of these are really, really fascinating. The people that are involved in the stories are, fascinating in some respects. We're going to get into the details of their abduction and, what it's led to in their lives. But I think when we're finished with this show, you're going to either feel like we are not alone, or, man, there are some loonies in this world.
Right. It's going to be one or the other. You're not going to be on the fence.
I don't necessarily think it's going to be the latter. I think, you're going to feel like, okay, there are some people out there that have had experiences that, are crazy enough that they're believable, and that we are not alone.
Right.
And something's out there. I tend to think that something's right here. But either way, these are going to be some really great stories. So you'll enjoy it, Adam. Let's get it rolling, brother.
All right. So as we always say, go check our sources down at the bottom of the show notes. You can find where we found all this information. You can keep looking into the abduction stories if you want. Like Matt said, these are some of the ones that we found most compelling. We found some other ones, but we figured they deserve their own full episode. Yeah. And when you compile these along with the ones that we've done before and the ones that we will do in future episodes, it paints a pretty compelling picture for something going on, like Matt said.
Man, it does. It really does. You're just like, you can't make up all of this.
Right. Right. And you can't take one individually and say, yes, 100% there's aliens out there and they're abducting people. You can't do that off of one individual abduction encounter, abduction story, whatever. You kind of have to do like Matt and I have done over the years and look at all of them and go, there's something about all of these that makes me feel like they're legitimate, because there are some wacko stories, but we didn't put the wacko stories in here.
Right. Yeah. We weeded them out for you.
So the first one that I've got is the Berkshire UFO sighting. Now, in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, in 1969, there was a mass UFO incident that a bunch of people were witness to, and people all over America were fascinated by. Now, in Roswell, New Mexico, a replica of the alleged vessel was even displayed at the International UFO Museum. So that's kind of cool. And in the Roswell International UFO Museum, the replica of what this craft that was seen was supposed to look like is there in the museum. Now, on the evening of September 1st, 1969, the residents of the town of Sheffield, located in southern Berkshires, watched as lights descended down into the town. Many of these residents said that the lights were attached to a UFO. Now, according to those who witnessed the incident, they said the UFO was disc-shaped and that it was performing, quote, acrobatic maneuvers in the sky above the town. They said they couldn't exactly pinpoint how long the incident occurred because most or all of them, quote, lost track of time. Which that seems to be a common occurrence with a lot of these UFO sightings. However, the seemingly brief UFO encounter was apparently powerful enough to leave a lingering sense of mass confusion in its wake. School kids were drawing UFOs in class while adults called into the local radio station to explain what they had seen. Quote, "We had listeners call the radio station that evening," said David Issy, general manager of local radio station WSBS. Quote, "At the time, they didn't know if it was a UFO. They just, called the station to say something bizarre has happened."
Yeah, and that's, that's always one of the things that makes me feel like, okay, I'm interested. I want to hear more, because you didn't immediately jump to UFO.
Right.
You thought, well, there's something weird. It's a weird looking plane. Maybe you even thought, oh crap, are we under attack or something like that? And so they reach out to local news stations or an Air Force base or something like that, and they're going, "Hey, this is what we saw. Do y'all know about this?" And go from there, instead of going, "Hey, I'm on the news and I saw a UFO today."
Right.
Instead of jumping to that, they kind of go. It's kind of like what I do and what Adam does with paranormal experiences. It's like, could this have been something else? If I hear a noise, I don't immediately think, well, it's a ghost.
Right.
But when I can't explain it, then, I start to ponder.
Yeah, perhaps it is.
Same thing here. Yeah, same thing here.
Yep. And a lot of witnesses said they didn't know exactly what they saw, but they know they, quote, saw something strange. So it was later estimated that about 40 people reported seeing the UFO. Some of them who were children at the time still live in the area today. Quote, "Children coming into school, talking about the event," said Robert Kroll, the director of the Great Barrington Historical Society in 2018. Quote, "An old student of mine," and this guy talks in partial sentences, but I'm quoting what they've got here. Children coming into school talking about the event. "An old student of mine." I'll keep going.
It's like he's doing Mad Libs.
Yeah, I'll keep going, but just bear with the partial sentences here. It was confusing to me when I first read it. Quote, "One is a local shop owner whose father was the police chief in town. So these are reliable people. These are not self-promoters." For some reason, he put a big pause in between "the" and "police chief," but you know, trying to do it the way he does it, it's difficult sometimes. People's cadences are weird. Now, the witness accounts were so plentiful and compelling that the local Great Barrington Historical Society recognized the encounter as, quote, "the first off-world UFO case in U.S. history," about 45 years later. Which is a weird thing to say since we have so many of these, but.
Right.
Now, let's look at the most prominent eyewitness to the event, Thomas Reed. Now, on September 1st, 1969, Thomas Reed was 9 years old, and he was riding in the car with his mom, grandma, and brother. As Reed recalled, the family was heading home from their restaurant Village on the Green, and he was busy giving his brother a little fireball candy, when suddenly they noticed a mass of glowing lights peeking out from behind the lush trees on the empty road. Now, the strange lights continued to spill out from behind the trees and onto the road as the family crossed the covered Sheffield Bridge, but they didn't know what to make of the sight. Quote, "We all looked at it because it was kind of a self-contained glow," Thomas said. "It rose up a little bit. It looked like it followed the dirt road, which I'm sure it probably didn't, but it appeared that way because we could see it through the trees. The light started to bleed through once we broke into a little bit of a clearing. We could see inside the car, so the light was flooding inside the car." So it was real bright if it was illuminating the inside of the car.
Oh, yeah.
Now, after an amber glow emerged on both sides of the road, Thomas recalled being taken to a hangar-like area that was bigger than a football field. Quote, "We encountered something," Reed said. "It was definitely not of this world. We had a black and white television at the time, and the imagery that we saw on this thing was unbelievable. There were lights that looked like fluorescent tubing inside this hangar." Quote, "This hallway we had seen was circular with a Y configuration almost to control the flow of traffic. This one room had a bowed-in wall that was rounded. This was not something that you would have seen in 1969 anywhere else. I have no idea where I was, but I know that what I saw was very different than anything I've ever seen today, 50 years later." So I think it's interesting that he mentions this is not something you would have seen anywhere in 1969 in the normal world. It's an interesting fact to me.
Well, I wonder I don't get the significance of the black and white TV.
I didn't either when he quoted that. I guess he was saying, what I gather is that what he was saying is they had a black and white TV at home. So what they saw with these fluorescent illuminated lights and everything, he never witnessed a sight like that on TV because it was in full color. I don't know for sure. That's what I gathered from it, but it seemed like a weird addition to the description to me as well. But
yeah, okay. I buy that album.
Yep. Now, glimpses of this strange place muddied his brain until he realized that they were back inside the car. His grandmother and mother had switched seats in the car. So, like if mom was driving and grandma was in passenger seat, when they came back from the abduction, grandma was now driving. And we've heard several stories of people after an abduction being placed back almost exactly right, but not quite.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to come up again too.
Either in the wrong seat, in the wrong side of the road, their pants were on backwards, something was off.
Can you imagine? You come to and your pants are on backwards?
Yep. You lose track of time. You wake back up and all of a sudden my pants are on backwards. What is wrong? Now, more astonishingly, there were no more glowing lights, Thomas Reed said. Quote, "Everything got really calm. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. There was like a barometric change in pressure. It was just like a dead silence. Then there was an eruption of crickets and frogs and it got really loud. And that was it," Reed said, adding that it was all, quote, "quite confusing." So it's that Oz effect that we've heard about. At the time, everything's dead silent. And then we talked about it in Missing 411, where people are walking through the forest and all of a sudden everything goes quiet. Crickets, everything. So
have you ever experienced that?
Not in that sense, but I have been in the woods, and I think a large predator or something walked close because the birds and everything stopped.
Okay.
And, the crickets didn't stop, but all the bigger animals stopped making noises. And I went, crap, I'm not alone. There's a large animal out here because they were fine with me. Now they're not.
Right. I've had that happen to me before. And I was kind of like, I was freaked out because I didn't necessarily think large predator, but I definitely thought I'm not alone, out here. And it's an eerie feeling.
Yeah.
When I always think of it as like when you're at a party and you're telling somebody a story and everything's loud, and right when you're ready to say something, everybody at the party decides to shut up at the exact same time.
Yeah. Music goes off, they shut up, and you go, my butthole itched. What?
Yeah. I used a goody hairbrush to get up. Everybody's looking at you. You're like, what? I didn't say anything.
Yeah, that was him. So Reed has been the most vocal witness to the 1969 Berkshire UFO, and he helped convince other witnesses to pool money together to erect a 5,000-pound concrete monument, which was built by the covered Sheffield Bridge where he saw the UFO with his family. Now, benching and lighting decorations were also put around this monument after it was erected. Well, later, Reed formed the nonprofit UFO Monument Park Incorporated to maintain the plot of land where the monument stood. Now, I heard that since, I guess, in recent times that monument has been torn down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't go to verify it, but I feel like I read that recently they've torn that monument down.
Well, I just looked it up to look at the pictures of it. It's got some pictures where it had been vandalized. They had spray painted an X across the word. It's nothing. It's funny. It's nothing spectacular. I mean, it's just
like a plaque on a concrete pillar or something.
It's like something you would see outside of a historic home or something,
right,
and you can just read the little blurbs about it. But a neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
You can, from the pictures I'm looking at, you can see the Sheffield Bridge behind it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. It seems pretty innocuous to me. I mean, I can imagine why somebody would decide they're going to go and paint it.
People are just wacko nowadays.
Yeah. Or just mean,
Mean. Yeah. Yep. Well, this sighting apparently wasn't Reed's first encounter though. And we need to look at it quickly to help you kind of know what his history is. So he says that in September 1966, so 3 years before, his encounters began with floating orbs entering the bedroom shared by Thomas and Matthew Reed in their Sheffield home. So Stephen White, a MUFON researcher that worked extensively with Thomas to collect information on the case, recounts, quote, "The orbs seemed solid like glass, but without density. The balls were not luminous, but resembled a shiny hole in the air that you could not see through with a bluish outer ring. The orbs had direction. One of the orbs moved slowly to the left of the window, then along the south wall of the room just below the ceiling. Thomas felt as if they could see and were watching him. He closed his eyes, hoping when he opened them, they would be gone, and he did this several times," end quote. Well, days later, a more intense encounter unfolded. The boys found themselves standing at the top of their staircase with, quote, several 4.5 to 5 foot tall ghostly looking figures. And a few seconds later, they found themselves outside by the edge of the property where they saw additional beings and a tarnished looking craft described as having a, quote, turtle shell shape. The beings themselves were substantially similar to the stereotypical grays that are common in modern UFO literature, but also noticeably different, quote, as if they were half human and half gray. So they soon found themselves aboard the craft, which appeared spacious within, with smooth white hallways and no chairs. Separated from his brother, 6-year-old Tom found himself in a room that he judged roughly 40 feet in diameter, where he was shown images on a large screen, including a drawing of a willow tree and what appeared to be galaxies. One being communicated with Thomas that he was there for, quote, important biological research. Quote, there were 5 beings on the craft, according to another collected account. Quote, the main gray, who seemed to have befriended Thomas, made him feel important. The interest was in Thomas's biological makeup. Thomas was important. So in various testimonies and interviews, Thomas has referred to this as the beginning of his, quote, indoctrination. Quote, something we were supposed to remember, a way to lead us into what was going to take place. Now, at the conclusion of this experience, the boys awoke back in their bedrooms, and according to Thomas's account of that night, they had no recollection of how they got back to their bedrooms. They just awoke back in their beds. Mm-hmm. And this was the first of their 3 abduction experiences that he and his brother have had. There is one other that we don't have time to get into now that was between the first and the Berkshire UFO sighting in 1969. So he has had multiple encounters and multiple abductions, which we tend to see in a lot of these cases. It tends to be throughout their life, and it can even pass on to their kids and their grandkids having the same experiences.
Yeah, it's a very common thing. But in a couple stories that I researched, that also occurs.
Right.
Multiple abductions maybe started in younger years, and it goes throughout adulthood. We've talked about another fella that he had an abduction story, and then continued communication, and then it began happening with his son when his son was an adult. To the extent that this guy, and I cannot remember his name, I remember seeing an interview with him, but he was saying his son, didn't believe him, but also didn't think he was, out to lunch either. So he was very conflicted until it happened to him.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, that guy's son, he didn't want to discuss it. He didn't want to be interviewed about it. He didn't want to talk about it. And he said he really didn't even like talking about it with his dad. Because it affected him emotionally. Probably for a lot of reasons. But, and you got to understand too, that there's a lot of folks that are just unwilling to come forward with these kind of stories, either because they're afraid of ridicule, or they're afraid for themselves from what they experienced. Maybe they don't want it to happen again, and they're worried that discussing it might bring it about. So the fact that these people have come forward and shared these stories is amazing in and of itself. And especially for somebody like Thomas Reed, who's he's the face of the Berkshire abduction. So, his story has been discussed and reviewed and dissected over the years. That's not a great feeling. I would think after a while, you're just kind of like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm not going to give interviews. I'm not going to write anything about it. I'm just done. It's too much.
Yep. Well, and, Matthew, Thomas's brother, doesn't have anything out there. He didn't talk about it. He didn't whatever. So he's probably that way.
Yeah.
Very much that way with I don't want to talk. Nope. Yeah. Just, Thomas is probably doing more than he would like him to.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I'm not sure where I would fall in that. Not having had anything even remotely close to this. I could see me feeling a little bit, I wouldn't want all that attention. Especially because with the good always comes the bad. I mean, you're going to get people that, are celebrating you. You're going to get just as many people ready to crucify you.
Oh, sure.
And I don't think either one is something that I would necessarily want.
Right.
Okay. So the next one we're going to talk about is Terrell Copeland. Now, Terrell Copeland's story was one I was not familiar with. I've at least heard about the other ones of these, but I had not really heard Terrell Copeland's name. But the thing about Copeland is he goes back to something I've said for years. He had a reputation. He had a lot to lose. Terrell Copeland is a former U.S. Marine. Okay. So when he comes up with these stories, it's really difficult to just completely discredit him, because, I mean, he's even as a former Marine, he still has a standing. He's not going to want to do anything that's going to completely tarnish his reputation. So for him to feel so strongly about this that he's willing to come forward and share these experiences, it makes me kind of stand up and take notice.
Right.
Now, Copeland claimed that his first experience with aliens occurred in 2007 when he captured footage of what he believed to be a UFO on his cell phone from his apartment in Suffolk, Virginia. Okay. But further interviews over the years has revealed that he had witnessed a massive triangular-shaped craft over a Suffolk shopping center one night in 2005, 2 years earlier. And there's even information out there that he potentially saw a UFO as a child. I think he was about maybe 15. So I think when this happened, he was in his mid to late 20s.
Okay.
So potentially 10 years prior, he had an experience, not necessarily an abduction experience, but he had witnessed something. But Terrell Copeland says, the first time I saw a jet maneuvering around a massive ball of light that was on East Washington Street, close to the Dismal Swamp. Dismal Swamp. That is a fitting name.
Yeah, for a
this swamp sure is dismal. Let's call it that. This is Dismal Swamp.
For a swamp, I don't know that you could get a better name.
That's right.
To be honest.
Just it'd have like Swampy Swamp. That'd be about it,
Wet swamp.
But he says, I was facing downtown. The light was probably about 2 miles away, and the jets were probably about 15,000 feet up. 3 nights later, he says he saw the same thing. He says, I was driving in front of the Fresh Pride Grocery Center, and I saw it up close. The light was hovering over the center. I pulled up to the parking lot and was not prepared for what I saw. There was an object inside the light. He said the light had been an illusion. At first, I thought it was just a stealth bomber. He said, but then I realized that a stealth wasn't that big. He described the vehicle as moving very slowly, taking about 7 minutes to get to the other side of the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you think about how big a grocery store parking lot is, and then taking 7 minutes to go from one side to the other, that's a long time. That thing's creeping.
And it's obviously not a plane, because they're moving a lot faster than that to stay up.
Right. Yeah. So it appears that it's got some other means of, propulsion to allow it to travel that slow and stay aloft.
Right.
Now, since then, Copeland said he's been the object time and time again, and the beings have begun to take a personal interest in him. He said he's not sure why or even how they take him, but they place him under paralysis. He says it's like when scientists observe a wild animal. Now, he says the first time was during the last Saturday in February of 2008. He said, I went to sleep on my couch and woke up in a massive dining hall. He said there were lots of tables, everything was white, and people were eating. He said they all looked like human beings. Now, Copeland said he was still in his bedclothes, and at first he thought he was just having a crazy dream. He took it as a real experience when he realized later that the speakers that he kept on his window had been moved. He said they were tucked away in a position that made no sense. He said, it's not something I would have done. The only conclusion for me was that they brought me in and out through the window and placed the speakers back there. Yeah. So this goes again to Adam. Adam's talking about in the Berkshire case, the mom and the grandmother had switched places. In this case, Copeland is looking, going, okay, I thought this was a dream, but I wouldn't have done that with those speakers. I wouldn't have arranged them in that way. I wouldn't have any reason to do it that way. And so that kind of led him to think a little bit harder and go, maybe that wasn't a dream.
Right.
Now, in regards to the 2007 video, Copeland says that was an orb of light. He said it was just a big ball of light. It wasn't moving. He said one was solid white and the other was directly across the street from it, about 300 feet above the ground, and it was changing colors very rapidly. Copeland recalled a feeling as though something was wrong and that he wasn't supposed to be witnessing this. But he alleged that it wasn't until after he published the footage online that things really got weird. He says, I woke up from a nap by the sound of someone trying to enter my apartment. I said, who is it? And there was no answer. You could see the doorknob moving and there was like a scratching at the door. He says, I keep a firearm. I mean, he's ex-military.
Yep.
He said it was on his table and he said he remembers thinking, I need to go get up and get my gun. But despite the urge to get up, Copeland said he was completely paralyzed and was only able to move his eyes.
Oh, wow.
But suddenly, he says he heard a voice through the door tell him, you don't need that weapon. We won't harm. Now, Copeland says that the visitor identified himself as military and stated that the government, quote, has a personal relationship with E.T. Now, that statement there sounds a little strange.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the movie. Okay. So whenever somebody says E.T., if you're of a certain age, you think about E.T., the alien from the movie.
Yeah.
You know, the big goofy looking
E.T. phone home.
head, the long neck that goes up and down, all that. Yeah. Now, I don't even think my younger kids would know what E.T. was. Maybe they've seen it. I couldn't say for sure. That's why I say of a certain age. But I have also read that this is an acceptable term for these beings.
Yeah.
Extraterrestrial. Yep. That is, you know, if you believe these folks that have communicated with aliens, they say this is the term that they prefer. Okay. So, you know, be sure to be politically correct when you're speaking with your neighborhood aliens.
Right.
He said the incident certainly resembled the natural phenomenon known as sleep paralysis, which a lot of people have experienced. Adam, you've had experiences like that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He said, but Copeland soon began to experience missing hours. Okay. And this is another common thread with these stories is the missing time.
Yep.
He says he was incapable of accounting for 4 waking hours during a span of 2 nights. He said, when you see these objects and then you do the research and then you see that so many people have experienced the same thing as you have to say to yourself, maybe there is something to this. So Copeland says he began to keep a log and sketches from his memory of what had happened during his episodes of missing time. Okay? Because he would sit there and say, okay, so I did this, I ate lunch, I did this, I'm in this giant dining hall. There's a lot of people around me.
I'm in my underwear, basically.
I'm in pajamas. You know, it's like Hitchhiker's Guide.
Don't forget your towel.
Yeah, that's right. Don't forget your towel. But then when he goes back and he's kind of journaling this, he's realizing that more time has passed than what he can account for.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, you know, where was I? What was I doing? Why can't I remember what happened from 2 to 4 o'clock or whatever? if that's ever happened to you, it is a really bizarre sensation. Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's happened to me once. I was really, really sick. Okay. Was really, really sick. And, was taking some medication. And I mean, I was not asleep. I know I wasn't asleep. But I couldn't tell you what I did over a span of about 3 hours for anything. Huh. And it just knocks you back. So I would imagine when he started picking up on this, that's what it was. I mean, you're gobsmacked. You're like, what? Why can't I remember this? Mm-hmm. What could I possibly have been doing? You start looking for clues to give you an idea. Maybe I was working on something. Maybe I was writing. Maybe I was cooking. You can't figure it out. But he goes on to say that he was in a room and he saw a woman who didn't have complete human features. He said she had the typical black eyes that you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship.
Weird.
So time has passed. He can't account for it. But Copeland's stories were eventually chronicled on the History Channel. And, as I said, they're pretty compelling, but they're also unproven, which all alien abduction cases are.
Right.
But in the end, Copeland says that his experience was for the best, and he feels like it has left him with a desire to be a better person. So he feels like maybe he was singled out. But he goes a step further. Okay. And this is what's really, really fascinating about Terrell Copeland's story. He believes that further evidence of his abductions is in an unknown rare blood disorder that was discovered when UFO Hunters, the show, took him to a doctor who told him he shared the disorder with other people who had had similar experiences.
Man, I have heard about this.
Uh-huh.
This is, you remember, you and I talked about wanting to do an episode on something similar to
about
this.
These abductees that all seem to have this similar blood disorder. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So Terrell Copeland is one of these folks. He says, a head researcher and author told me that he believes I am an alien hybrid. At that point, Copeland says, I thought this was way past the point of lunacy. So even Copeland admits that this sounds outlandish.
Yeah.
But the more he researched and studied UFO reporting and extraterrestrials, the more weight it gave to the theories. He says every culture from the Aztecs to the Egyptians talk about someone coming from the sky. He even references the Bible. He says he believes that many of the instances in the Bible, specifically in Ezekiel, Genesis, and Exodus, that speak of beings descending from the sky are actually literal descriptions of aliens. He says the beings, he said, planted humans here on Earth and have been monitoring us. The information is there for us. Unfortunately, we don't look at things with a logical mindset. As humans with modern civilization, we've been blessed and we think we're at the top of the proverbial food chain.
Mm-hmm.
But he says that is not the case.
Hubris.
Like
we've mentioned before. It's the hubris of mankind.
Exactly. And, with him referencing the Bible, it always makes me think back to the Jimmy Carter reference. There's the story that says that at one point during his presidency, Jimmy Carter was told all of the stories about Area 51 and aliens that were here and were known, ships that had been, but that's all speculation. But as the story says that after all this information was shared with him, because it was Jimmy Carter's intent to learn this information and release it to the public, that he said we cannot tell society about this. This would shake the world to its foundations. And he said, even as, a Christian, this is just, this is rattling my faith. And that's big. I mean, that's really big to think that, everything you knew from your life, regardless of what your upbringing was, you learn information that makes you question everything. Can you imagine how that would make you feel? It said he actually wept when he read it. Now, again,
probably pretty lost.
Yeah, this is a story. It's circulated around UFO researchers, for a long time. But it was Copeland referencing the Bible that made me think of that. And again, this guy's a former Marine. There's nothing about him that seems like he wants this kind of attention. And
he's trying to monopolize it.
Yeah.
Make money off of it, or
he's just not that. Okay. But he is the kind of figure that is, you can tell he is dealing with this. Mm-hmm. Okay. That this is not something like, hey, everybody, this happened to me. This is like, this happened to me. And I have to live with this knowledge every day of my life.
Well, and I thought it was interesting that you said he was paralyzed, kind of like scientists would study wild animals.
Yeah.
If he is a trained Marine, and depending on what his job was in the Marines, he could be a very proficient killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like wild animals can be.
Right.
And so the person studying him, the entity studying him, may say, you know what? If we don't put him out, he could kill us pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they've been following him for a while, like he says they have, then they know his training, and they might know we have got to completely sedate him.
Yeah.
To perform these tests on him. And maybe his job, maybe his previous profession is why they're mm-hmm. studying him. That the blood disorder along with the training, they're like, well, what is this blood abnormality? How does it contribute to his previous profession?
Yeah, my question on the blood abnormality would be, is it something that these folks have always had and that maybe that's why they were abducted? Or is it something that they have since being abducted?
Because of the abduction.
Yeah, it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. I think either way, it's fascinating.
Right.
Did they do something to you and now you have this odd blood situation going on? Or were you born with it and it somehow triggered them into you and they're like, uh-oh, we need to look at this guy. He's got the traits. This one over here's got them too.
Not to spoil the episode that we might do, but what we were looking at, it was a thing that you were born with this thing, and this states that you descend from the half alien, half human hybrids.
Yeah.
The Anunnaki or whatever from centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you continue to see it and continue to experience the abductions and the UFOs and the aliens. And I still want to get into that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be vague so that we don't give away our episode.
But you're saying, it's a trait that you're born with.
Correct.
And maybe not necessarily detectable.
Right.
By just routine healthcare, they're not going to pick up on it.
The one that I'm specifically thinking about, you can pick up on it. It just hasn't been verified that, nobody's come out and said, oh, well, this is because you're part alien. It's just there are a small group of the human race that has it.
Yeah.
And they just think it's a variation of our blood.
Yeah. Yeah. That alone is fascinating to me. So, yeah, look down the line at us doing a little bit further research into that.
Right. All right. So my last one is the Pascagoula, Mississippi encounter. And I for sure have heard of this one. The Copeland one, like Matt said, I hadn't really heard much of that. I think I've heard his name mentioned, but didn't know anything about his story. This one I have heard, but it's fascinating. October 11th, 1973. Two men, Calvin Parker Jr. and Charles Hickson, went to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, and they were frantic. They told the authorities that they had just been abducted by aliens. The two men showed the police that they each had a puncture wound in one arm, but the police were obviously still skeptical. They tried to catch Parker and Hickson in a lie while interviewing them, but they were never able to. Parker and Hickson also took polygraphs, and they passed them. Now, polygraphs, as we know, they're inadmissible in court, but usually officers use a polygraph to put you in an uncomfortable situation where you'll make a mistake in your lie.
Right.
Like if you murdered somebody and you go in for a polygraph and they tell you this is going to tell us whether you're lying or not, you're going to mess up. You're going to show signs of lying, where if you were just sitting and talking to them, maybe you wouldn't. Now, I can't use this in court, but it'll bring out some lying traits that if you study people who lie, you can tell, do they look this way? Do they use these kind of prefixes to their words? Do they sweat? Whatever. And the polygraphs will bring that out. They passed them. So it's obvious that they believed their story.
Right.
Now, Hickson was Parker's foreman at the local shipyard, and they decided to go fishing after work at an abandoned boat launch off of the bank of the Pascagoula River, and they stayed till after dark. Quote, I was just getting ready to get some more bait, Hickson told the Washington Post in 1975, when I heard a kind of zipping sound. I looked up and saw a blue flashing light. Calvin turned around too. We saw a 30-foot long object with a little dome on top. He said that as it hovered above the ground, 3 small creatures emerged from the craft, and they were also hovering above the ground. So they kind of floated out of the ship here. He said that both of them were paralyzed, and the creatures grabbed them with pincer-type claws and pulled them toward the object. Quote, I floated inside, Parker told the Biloxi Sun-Herald in 2018. Hickson said that while they were on the craft, they were subjected to a physical examination by something that looked like a, quote, big eye. So whatever was doing it, all it was a big eye. Like no body, no head. Yeah, just up close picture of Matt's eye there. Now, the whole time, there was a mechanical buzzing sound all around them, they said. Now, after the examination was finished, the creatures dropped Hickson and Parker off at the same spot on the river where they picked them up from. Hickson said he found Parker standing up with his arms raised to the sky and screaming. So, picture that. Parker is just standing there on the edge of the river, arms up in the air, just going, ah!
Yeah.
When Hickson finds him. I mean, I might have the same reaction.
Right.
Just, if I just wake back up on the side of the river, I'm probably going to be going, holy beep, 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 beep.
That's right.
I would be doing more than screaming, but it's just, the way he describes it was just a funny thing to me, that his arms are just up.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there screaming.
Yeah, it is funny.
Know?
I mean, it is. Yeah, you're right. I may do the same thing,
Yeah.
Just standing with his arms up screaming. I mean, that is funny.
Which, man, sometimes life will just make you do that in general.
That's right. I did it today.
Yeah, you just throw your arms up and start screaming. I've had it. I'm done.
I told Adam this today. I was like, I got stuck in the mud today at a patient's house, and it took me over an hour to get out. And I wound up, this lady's son had to pull me out, tow me out essentially to get me out of this muck. Now I'm standing out there. I am sinking in mud. My feet have sucked down in the mud. It's raining, and I am just like, I've had it. This is it. I'm done. Yep. And I just, I'm just throwing my hands up screaming. And then they're like, did you just get abducted by an alien? And I'm like, no, my car's in the mud.
Right. I just woke back up from being abducted by an alien. Now, after they found each other, after this, they ran for help. Now, at first, sheriff's investigators thought the men had been drunk or lying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you get two guys coming in the police, department going, I was just abducted by aliens. I don't know. He was standing there with his arms up in the air screaming. I mean, I was trying to get him away, and he just kept screaming with his hands up. And so you would think maybe they're drunk or that they're just telling a story. But after interviewing the men, they left the room with a recorder secretly taping, hoping to catch the pair dropping the act once they left. So that's smart, right?
Yeah.
They're like, but they didn't. They kept on talking about what they had seen and how scared they were. Quote, we did everything we knew to try and break their stories, Jackson County Sheriff's Captain Glenn Ryder told the Post in 1975. Quote, if they were lying to me, they should be in Hollywood.
Yep.
So, and that was a good idea. It's like, if they're telling us the story, then when we leave the room, they're going to have to talk to each other to continue figuring out the rest of the story, and we'll catch them. But they didn't. And
what's cool about it is that, they were trying to catch them in a lie and inadvertently added more truth to their story. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, overnight, this became national news. There were news conferences and cameras thrust in their still stunned faces. A, quote, UFO investigator from Northwestern University flew down and said their story checked out. I thought, oh, well, thanks, UFO investigator.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yep, checks out. Now back to Northwestern. Skeptics called them liars, or said Hickson had an episode of sleep paralysis with hypnagogic hallucinations, while Parker was, quote, highly suggestible. So I have to, Matt, he's fishing and all of a sudden has sleep paralysis with hypnagogic hallucinations, and he just talked Parker into going along with it and scared Parker enough that he went along with it.
I know, that's one of the most, that is one of the worst explanations I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh no, this was not a mass hallucination or hallucination shared by the two of these men. One of them, may have had a hallucination and then convinced the other one that it was real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So real that he stood on the side of the thing screaming with his arms up.
We're not going to let that go.
No, I'm going to be talking about that for weeks. I mean, there'll be multiple episodes where I bring that up. Now, believers flooded into Pascagoula by the thousands. They were wrapped in aluminum foil and sitting all night on the hoods of their cars waiting for visitors from another world. So that's got to make you feel good about your story. You come out, try to get help, and then all of a sudden there's people wrapping themselves in tin foil and sitting on their cars to see something like that.
Well, I've always thought it was so weird that aluminum foil is the thing to go for.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been the case. The tinfoil hat, all that,
Yep.
What?
Aluminum
Why?
foil keeps the aliens away. I don't know.
It is so strange to me that is what everybody migrates to.
Yeah. It blocks the rays, the mind reading rays.
Like it can't block anything else other than maybe light, you know?
Yeah. It catches on fire in the microwave. So what is it? Just if they're zapping you with it with some mind beam, it'll catch on fire and then your head will be on fire.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's smart. Now, Hickson was 42 at the time. He was well known in the community, so perhaps he felt more able to handle the media crush, but he recounted the experience to anybody who he could talk to. And he actually went on Johnny Carson and Dick Cavett to talk about his experiences. And in 1983, he published a book about it. But Parker, he was only 18 or 19 when it happened. And he had just arrived in Pascagoula. He came from an even smaller town. And his plan was to earn some extra money and then return home to get married. He told the media that he had passed out at the beginning of the whole affair and couldn't remember what happened. Apparently, that was the only lie he told, he said to the Sun Herald in 2018. He lied about that to get them to stop asking him questions.
Yeah.
He said, in fact, he did remember what happened and was so afraid that aliens had infected him with something that when he got home from the sheriff's department, he took a bath in bleach.
Lord.
Which I've taken a bath in bleach after being out in the woods for a while to kill ticks and chiggers and stuff, but not an alien virus.
Yeah.
But I've never been abducted, so maybe I would do the same. But
bleach is the way to go, I guess.
I guess. It's better than tinfoil. But look up pictures of these two. You can see pictures of them sitting shortly after the encounter, and he really does, Parker really does look traumatized by the whole thing.
Yeah.
Hickson looks a little better. He still looks scared, but Parker looks traumatized. I mean, just from that one picture, you're like, holy crap, this kid's been through something. And at only 18 or 19 years old, that would have to be a lot to take in.
Yeah. I think his age plays into that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, you know, it is a terrifying thing. But when you're younger, you know, it's really hard to handle stuff like that. I mean, you know,
in your 40s, like Hickson was, you've already experienced so much crap in your life. You're like, what else?
Yeah.
Of course this happens.
Yeah. But at 18,
I got
19,
a mortgage, of course.
You know, it's something different. And of course, you know, you're going to know that when these deputies and investigators were questioning them and doing that, you know, they admit they were trying to catch them in a lie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're being, you know,
harsh,
grilled, you know, by an officer at a young age. I mean, you get to you see why there's situations where younger people have confessed to crimes they didn't commit. You know, because they're just scared. They just want to go home.
Yep.
You know,
they want to get out, whatever they can say to get out of this situation.
Yeah. And I'm sure Parker had that kind of emotion going on. I mean, I know I would have at that age.
Yeah. Now, within a few weeks of the abduction, though, he skipped town. He got married and he picked up work in oil fields. If somebody at a job recognized him, he would quit.
Yeah.
Move, get another job. He did not want to talk about it. So if he started working in some oil field job and somebody was like, aren't you that Parker guy that was abducted by, he's like, well, I'm done, last day, and goes somewhere else because he doesn't want to talk about it.
Right. And I mean, you know, this was before social media, you know, and, you know, imagine how much worse it would be.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so somebody comes up and recognizes you. You're just kind of like, oh, man, this is going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
You know,
crap. Got to get a new job.
Yeah. Next thing you know, he's in the foreman's office and he's being questioned about it. But because, I mean, I honestly don't know how employers would act today. I can't say it would be just extraordinarily accepted, depending on what job you had. But in 1975, yeah, that would totally be a reason that somebody would fire you.
Yeah, they'd say you're drunk all the time.
But, you can't be coming to work and spreading these kind of stories, whether he said anything or not. But as soon as he's recognized, the story comes out, and people are going to ask questions. So, I would imagine, he just said, I got to go, and just left.
Yep. And, we've talked about it before on other things. If people are trying to make money off of an encounter, it makes it less believable. Well, Hickson, they say, if he was trying to get rich from this story, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because Parker told the Sun-Herald that before Hickson's death in 2011, he occasionally had to pay the older man's electric bills. So even after the book and going on Carson and all this, he wasn't making money off of the story.
Yeah.
He was just trying to get the story out there.
Right.
He couldn't even pay the electric bill sometimes.
Yeah.
So Parker just recently passed toward the end of 2023, but he had slowly been coming out of hiding and discussing the events of that night for the last few years before he passed. He did eventually publish a book in 2018, and in March of 2019, new witnesses emerged from the shadows to discuss the events of that night. They claimed that they saw a UFO that had flashing blue lights, and it was flying up and down the Pascagoula River on the night that Parker and Hickson said they were abducted. They said they kept it to themselves all these years because they were afraid of people's reactions. One of the witnesses, Maria Blair, told the Clarion Ledger, quote, "The story is very true. That's what bothered me for 45 years. It's been on my mind for 45 years.
Man, imagine holding on to something like that.
Yeah, I can't. I'd have to tell people. I mean,
yeah.
You see what I do for a living. I talk into a microphone. I'd have to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to tell. So, but we're tellers, Yep. But I can see where, again, at the time you would just be like, I didn't see that. That's not what I saw. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't a UFO. And over the years, you hear this story from these two men, and it weighs on you. I imagine, Maria Blair probably did share it with some of her close friends or family. And who knows, maybe she was, at least in her inner circle, ridiculed or anything for that story. So, yeah, I mean, she keeps it to herself. She doesn't come forward, and then later says, okay, I'm at a point in my life where I can share this, and this is what I saw, and it happened to be the same night that these guys claim they were abducted. All right, so the last one we're gonna cover tonight it's interesting because it's a little bit different than these other ones. This is the case of Debbie and Audrey Hewins. Now, Audrey and Debbie Hewins, they not only claim that aliens exist, but that alien abductions occur, and they've had them probably since they were around 5 years old. Now, Audrey says that as a child, a bright blue light would come into their room and the door would open, and there would be this foggy, kind of misty blue light, and it would shine through the whole house, and then two figures would come in. Now, Audrey and Debbie are twins, and when this first happened to them, it frightened them to the point that they would beg their parents not to put them to bed because they were afraid that they would encounter what they called the bald men.
Sure. Yeah.
But their parents, they just dismissed it. as you know, it was just a way of them trying to stay up a little longer. It's kids telling stories, so that, there wasn't really any credibility there. But Audrey says her first alien abduction occurred, during childhood, but that the visitations continued well into her adulthood. Audrey says, we have been together on abductions. We have been up in crafts, and we've seen our house from above. So we realized that, these entities are not from here. They're not from here,
Yeah. You ain't from around here, are you,
fella? It must be from up north.
Way up north.
She says they're very good at mind erasing, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure do got a pretty mouth, boy. Sorry.
I see lights and hear banjos, But Audrey says that they would leave bits and pieces of things that they could remember, but maybe not the full story. So, they would have these odd little memories. Said most of the time, Debbie and Audrey were abducted together, but then there was one particular time that happened just to Audrey, and she was, as far as she could tell, by herself. She says her first memory of this encounter was of realizing she was alone inside a strange room, apparently inside the alien's craft. However, as soon as she came to this realization, her surroundings appeared to melt away. Said suddenly it appeared to her as though she was simply standing in space. And even stranger, she realized she was looking down at Earth. So,
That's
it
weird.
wasn't like she's floating up above the yard. She's actually in space, and then everything kind of fades away, and it's like she's just hovering there, maybe it was some type of cloaking mechanism for this craft or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she says it was when they were 11 or 12 when some of the more detailed and harrowing encounters occurred. Encounters that the two girls would recall and record much more clearly than their early childhood one. Said, and these encounters were much more than just visitations. Said they quickly progressed to regular abductions. Said the two girls recorded that these apparent alien entities would undertake, quote, all kinds of experiments on them, experiments that took place on board the creature's spacecraft. Whenever they would wake from these experiences, their memories of these encounters, while disjointed and hazy, were more prominent. They had also apparently specific windows of missing time. See, here we are again with the missing time, which made the girls contemplate the notion that their alien abductors had the ability to target specific memories of the encounters to ensure the girls could not remember them fully.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an interesting detail, because other UFO researchers have uncovered similar stories from other abductees, where it's like, I can't remember everything, but I can remember specific instances. But they don't have a full, this was the beginning, this is what happened, and this is when I got back.
I think Travis Walton was the same way.
Yeah. And again, a lot of these folks, and the twins did this too, will undergo hypnosis to try to unlock repressed memories. Now, although the twins refer to these entities as the bald men, what they've described to people that listen to them resemble what ufologists have dubbed alien grays. Now, grays are alleged to be a type of extraterrestrial being that is human-like in form, gray colored and with an enlarged hairless head. Okay. The grays are the typical, if somebody said, hey, draw me a picture of an alien, this is what most people would draw. The bigger head, it comes down to the point, the big eyes, no hair. Okay. And in the book, The Alien Abduction Files by Kathleen Marsden, the women explain that over the years of their abductions by the bald men, eventually they would meet other entities. Now, the other entities that they met were lizard-like humanoids that would appear in the girls' bedroom. These were essentially reptilians.
Yeah.
While they would perform all manner of experiments on the girls, on at least one occasion, both sisters claimed that they were taken to an underground location and raped by a large reptilian humanoid. And while that sounds preposterous, it's a claim that has been made many times by many people all over the world. That there was some type of sexual component to their abduction,
male and female.
Right. Now, the Hewins told Marsden that the reptilians had no sympathy or feelings at all. They said that when the reptilians were near them, they felt as if they were, quote, sucking the energy from them. It's another claim that other abductees have reportedly experienced, saying that the reptilians feed on energy, particularly negative energy. So where are you going to get that negative energy if you've abducted a human?
Yeah, scare them.
Yeah, that's it. You're going to scare them. You're going to terrify them. Yep. And you're going to draw off of that energy. So Audrey recalls that on January 3rd, 2007, she started to experience feelings of anxiety similar to those that she experienced as a child, which always was a precursor to an alien visit. Her memory of that experience is clouded, but Audrey recalls waking on a table with the feeling that something was, quote, scraping my left ovary.
Yeesh.
As soon as this realization came, she blacked out. She suspects that it was due to something that was being administered by her abductors. Now, Marsden also notes that based on Audrey's notes, these visitations often occurred either just after or before the full moon. The January 2007 incident occurred the day before the moon was at its fullest. Audrey herself provided a potential explanation for this. She said it happens to be the time that she would be ovulating, which she suspects is the best time for her abductors to perform their reproductive experiments. Now, again, this is something that has been put forward by other UFO investigators and people that recount stories of being abducted.
Yep.
Okay.
Some breeding program or something.
Well, yeah. Or, maybe they're, it's either they're trying to look into how humans reproduce or seeing if an individual would be a potential
surrogate.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for. Surrogate. That's it.
You're welcome.
Now, while she was initially hesitant to come forward, Audrey claimed that after a non-human entity saved her from drowning in the ocean, she was inspired to dedicate her life to openly discussing her alien abduction experiences. While in their 20s, the twins reached out to MUFON for help, stating that the drama around their abductions had become too much for them to handle. Debbie underwent a hypnotherapy session to help unlock some of her memories, but unfortunately, unlocking those memories proved to be too traumatic. Debbie recalls everyone in the room screaming as she was coming out of her hypnotic state because her skin had turned an eerie shade of gray. She says everyone freaked out. I freaked out.
Yeah.
But both women agree that
weird.
Hypnosis probably wasn't the best idea. But, when you look at some of these stories, hypnosis, it always comes up eventually.
Sure. Yep.
Now, neuroscientist Robert Davis, who was one of the first professionals to lend his support to the twins, explained that Audrey and Debbie Hewen's experiences are, quote, shared by many thousands, if not millions, worldwide. It's unreasonable to think that they would all be lying or reporting dreams and fantasies, he said.
Mm-hmm.
These events are consistently reported and should be taken seriously by everyone in spite of their uniqueness.
Now, and by uniqueness, he's being polite, and most people would say weirdness.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is. They're like, when you get these researchers and he's a neuroscientist, for crying out loud. He's like, we've got to take these things a little bit more serious.
Sure.
Now, for Debbie and Audrey, they have actually started a support group for people that have been abducted. And it started out, let me tell you, it's Starborn Support. Okay, that's the name of their group. For a long time, it was just a hotline. Okay, nearly 2,000 calls and counting.
Wow.
And she says today they have 12 chapters on the East Coast, in Latin America, and Colombia. Audrey says the hotline still rings, often at 3:33 a.m., which according to her is a common return time for abductees. I had never heard that before. Had you?
I've heard there's a lot of weirdness around 3:33 in the morning, but I can't say for sure that I've heard it was the return time for abductees.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of weirdness in the paranormal realm around 3:33 in the morning.
Yep. But they say oftentimes the caller is panicked and they just want somebody to listen and believe them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you imagine something like this happening to you and then having to tell somebody and go, I need you to believe me. I need you to listen and believe me. But instead of abductions or abductees, she calls people who have had encounters experiencers. People can either be taken, sent mental pictures, or hear voices, she said. And some experiences are dormant. Some are activated. I mean, they remember what happened. Now, Hewen says that in her experiences, she's learned that the Earth is not in danger of an alien attack, but that the planet is very, very sick and people have lost touch with it. She talks about pollution, pulling oil and gas from the ground, losing animals to extinction. She said the planet being destroyed would have a domino effect throughout the universe, and that's not going to be allowed. And that's another thing that we've heard very commonly, is that it's the reason there's so many UFO sightings around war areas.
Yeah, nuclear facilities.
Yeah, nuclear sites. Yeah. It's because they're observing to make sure that we don't blow ourselves up.
Right. And it could be because, like we've talked before about this being a hub of transportation, like they use wormholes to travel. Maybe we are a layover spot, or we are a conjunction area. And if we destroy the planet, then we mess up their conjunction, their layover in Burbank kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, like we said, 4 very compelling stories. You see similarities in all 4. There are distinct differences, but all of these individuals, they firmly believe that they were taken.
Mm-hmm.
They were either experimented on, they were transported other places. And in a lot of cases, it's happened multiple times. So it really becomes hard for me to discredit all of these folks.
Right.
They've been put under scrutiny. Their stories have been tested. They've taken lie detectors. you just can't throw them all under the bus and go, they're all crazy. They're all hoaxers. They're just looking for attention.
Looking for money.
Yeah, looking for money. I mean, you can't do that with these stories. So you have to wonder, did these people really get abducted by aliens?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
at least
it
abducted
really
by
makes you
something.
question it.
Like,
yeah,
it maybe not aliens, but they were abducted by something.
Yeah. And mass hallucinations is not the answer.
No.
I am 100% convinced of that.
Hypnagogic hallucinations and being easily controlled is not either,
Yeah. Yeah. A blood disorder that can be detected medically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not a prank. It's not a hoax.
From many different abductees, not just one.
So it's extremely curious to me. And again, these are just 4 stories. And, as that neuroscientist said, these are stories that people share all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds, thousands of people have similar experiences. And it's not just in the United States. It's all over the world.
Yep.
So, you're thinking all of these people can't be lying.
Right.
All of them are, you take out a few of them and you're like, yeah, your story didn't fit. But they're not all lying.
Right.
They're not all crazy either.
Right. Yeah. Because it's not all people that you would look at and go, yeah, they were probably abducted by something with a clown wig on. It's
right.
Like some of these people are, if they didn't tell you about their abduction experience, you would have no clue that something was different about them.
Exactly.
They are productive members of society. They act and seem normal.
Mm-hmm.
And some are Marines. He can't be the only service member that has had a story like this. I guarantee you there are more Marines, Air Force, Army, Navy out there, and soon to be, I'm sure Space Force has had some too. I mean, it's in the name. They have to have. But
that's right.
I guarantee you there are other service members out there who have had some type of interaction like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at how many have come forward with video or stories of just, UFO sightings.
Right.
There's so many of those. You think I'm with you, Adam. There's bound to be some other military personnel that have had abduction like experiences. So, but tell us what you guys think.
Yep.
I mean, do you think these folks are just completely out there? Or do you feel like that there is something, abducting these individuals, taking them, observing them, studying them, even doing experiments on them, and then sending them back home? Let us know what you think. And the best place to do that is in our Facebook group. And again, our Facebook group is fantastic. It's called The Graveyard. It is a safe place. It is a private group. You can share these stories. No one is going to make fun of you. No one is going to think you're a loony. We love hearing stories. We love hearing opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, look, you guys have a fresh look on something that we've discussed on the show that we haven't considered.
Yeah.
And we love that. So please, keep sharing those thoughts. Keep sharing those opinions. We love to have them. When you're done there, you can check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And there you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show and you can become a patron. And as we announced at the beginning of the show, we've got a brand new show coming out for our $10 patrons later this month. So, keep your RSS feed tuned for our new show. Man, this was a long one, but this was incredibly cool. And it was a heck of a lot of fun to research. Cause it definitely makes me think we're not alone. You know?
Oh, yeah.
We're not alone. So until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.